Natalie, thank you for being here.
Great. Okay, so just I'll just start off with saying thanks to everyone for giving me this chance to chat with you today. And maybe Laura, if you can just let me know if there's trouble hearing me or if I'm getting patchy. I apologize for my frazzled appearance, but today is actually the Rocket Greens Harvest Day. So we've already just spent 3 hours here inside the CCAN this morning. It's about 26 Fahrenheit or 26 degrees Celsius inside of here today, with it being so warm in Churchill. So we're a little bit sweaty, a little bit frazzled, but we got all of our work done. We harvested around 300 units of produce this morning. But before we get into that, we'll start with the basics, because I know that the focus of this is on building. So we'll just talk about what the Rocket Greens garden actually is. So if you look down behind me here, we are inside of a standard 40-foot shipping container, or CCAN. Some of you might know them as CCANs. And this one in particular is designed by a company based out of Ottawa called the Growcer, which is a clever play on words if you ask me. And they have a manufacturing facility in Seattle. So these are all, the shipping containers are in Seattle, purchased there, and then all the retrofitting is done there. So they've done stainless steel against all the walls, and then between the actual steel of the container and the stainless steel is R20 insulation, so it's really good for our subarctic environment. Stainless steel on the floors. They've added all of these trays for growing. So the way the growing trays work, I'll just bring you down here a little bit. So there is a main tank at the front, which we'll get to, which has pumps inside, and I can show those to you in a moment. And they pump the water up. Oh, goodness. Funny tour. Okay. So up in these PVC pipes all along the top. And then the water comes down into each growing tray through these little black tubes. So there's enough pressure from the one pump in the tank to pump all the way to the back of the CCAN, all 4 levels of shelving, and then bring it through the back pressure into these tubes. So the water flows in the tubes. I've got the pumps turned off at the moment so that you guys can actually hear me talking, but the water would flow out of this tube into the growing tray, and then they're just angled ever so slightly downhill so that they catch in a floor tank, and inside the floor tank is another pump which takes the water back to the main tank, where it can be recharged with the nutrients, so that the water is continually cycling and always topped up with everything that the plants need. So in the main area here, we have 2 sides with 3 sections of 4 shelves for a total growing space of 1,800 mature plants. So we have it divided so that we have a harvest of about 350 per week. We've eliminated 1 shelf. I'll bring you back here. Hopefully my signal still works. We've got 1 area of the shelving dedicated to just herb growth. So they don't get picked every week. We can trim them and market them as weighed out portions. So back at the front of the CCAN is sort of like all of the mechanical work. So the first maybe 7 or 8 feet of the shipping container is dedicated to mechanical. So in this area we have the seedlings. So our seedlings grow in the seedling area for 2 weeks, and then they spend 1 month in the large side. So most of the crops we're growing, aside from the herbs, are working on a 6-week turnaround. The seedling area has its own water tank, bubbler, pump, which waters the 2 shelves of seedlings, because they have different nutrient requirements than the mature plants. We have a brain here, which sort of controls the lights, the temperature, It can measure the CO2 in here, the humidity, and then we can control all of those variables through that brain box. We do have a CO2 generator up here, but we're going to be replacing all of this, believe it or not. So we started growing our rocket greens in 2017. And already all the technology inside of our garden is outdated, and the new grocers that are being put out are coming out with different technology, iPad connectivity, harvest management systems, a much more updated nutrient adding system. So right now we've got nutrient tanks. Normally there's 3 here, but I just have the 1 at the moment, and the rest I've been doing manually, which would normally dose into the tank automatically. I'm going to turn to the side, turn my camera sideways just to show you. So the whole bottom of this one area is water tank. This is the main water for the system. It's dark in there, but it's just nutrient-rich water, and that's the water that flows through the whole system. So with all that technology, we basically manage the complete environment in here. The plants are growing completely soilless. The seeds are planted into Rockwool cubes. So I'm just gonna pull out a seedling here. So this is a brand new 2-week-old seedling that we put in the system today. So you can see that sort of fuzzy substance at the bottom there. That's Rockwool. It's completely inert. It's actually exactly what it sounds like. They've taken rock and superheated it into cotton candy consistency almost, and formed it into cubes. And you can plant your seed directly in there. And what it does is it allows root and water permeability, but it doesn't give the plants anything. It just gives them a structure, and it allows us to sort of stick our seedlings into all these little empty spots. So it's very easy to work with. It's not reusable, unfortunately, and there are, if you're interested in hydroponics for yourself, there are lava pebbles and other materials that you could wash and reuse, but on a scale this big, it's just not feasible for us to reuse that substrate. So we go with the Rockwool. We throw it all into our compost here at the Northern Study Center. Again, it doesn't break down, but it'll break apart and can be mixed in with the other compostable items and just be used as a bulk for outdoor growing, I guess you could say. So the cool thing about this shipping container garden was that it arrived in Churchill actually on a ship. So at the time when we got the funding to purchase this unit, the rail line to Churchill was out. If any of you are following along with that in the news, after our enormous blizzard of 2017, the train tracks at Churchill were washed out. So we managed to get the funding fast-tracked so that we could catch the shipping season. And this unit actually came here, so went from Seattle to Montreal, and then by boat out the St. Lawrence and all the way around the eastern coast of Hudson Bay, or eastern coast of Canada into Hudson Bay and to Churchill. So that's pretty neat. And one of the coolest things about it was that literally everything that you see in here was installed before it arrived. We hung a few of these ceiling fans and light fixtures and any like dangly bits, I guess you could say. But realistically, everything else was in here. We had turned the lights on and put the water into it within 2 days of cracking the doors open. So really, it's like a plug-and-play situation where you're essentially gardening within a day or two of receiving the unit. Of course, there was some site prep. I'm going to take you guys outside right now. If I do get disconnected, I will call right back. So I'll show you the outside of the shipping container, and then I'll just point out a couple things from out here. So we've added a porch just to ease the transition from outdoor Arctic weather into indoor gardening. And then this is the shipping container itself. So as you can see, just a regular 40-footer. We've placed it just on some beams, just a beam at the front and the back. part of the reason for that was simplicity, but also it would allow us to adjust the leveling of the unit so that the water flows correctly. Because we do get seasonal shifts in the weather from the ground, and the bottom side of the shipping container is insulated the same as all the rest of it, so it really doesn't matter to us that there's the wind blowing along underneath. I'm gonna just quickly show you guys what one of the pumps looks like. These are the main pumps that are used inside of inside the main water tank. There's nothing special about these pumps. They are high output. They're like a pretty standard pump that you would find maybe if you were lucky enough to have like a shooting water fountain in your backyard or something like that. So very, very standard. I think Laura had mentioned that you guys might be interested to know a little bit more about what something like this costs. And so I believe that our unit was $250,000. That would be shipped to Churchill, but included in that initial $250,000 is also all of the growing supplies needed for the first year, which were shipped at the same time. You might be interested to know about heating. So here's some interesting facts about how we heat the garden. So the grow lights themselves are LED. I'm just gonna point my camera at them. I mean, they're bright, bright lights. They have a special spectrum to accentuate leafy green growth. So they're not really intended for flowering plants. Like a tomato plant could grow under these grow lights, but it wouldn't be ideal. These are for the green growth. So it's a very bluey green spectrum. Even some of our lettuces would normally grow red under the sunlight, but they just stay green in here. So there's really no way for the greens to express any other colors. Sorry, I'm getting a message, but I can't read it.
Carly, I wonder if you could turn your camera where most of us are watching on computer, and by having it up and down, we're missing most of the picture.
Oh, okay, sure. Like you mean horizontally?
Yep, exactly, horizontally. Perfect. That's much better. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that. Sorry, this is only my second time doing this, so where was I? Oh, heating. Okay, so most people, when you learn about LED lights or people market them for your home, you're kind of told that they don't generate a lot of heat, and that is essentially true. However, inside of the C-can, we have 60 3-strip LED light fixtures. So there's quite a bit of LED lights in here, and they do generate quite a bit of heat. So in the winter months, we have our plants daytime at night. So our plants are having 16 hours of daylight and 8 hours of darkness, and we have it so that goes overnight. Because in the wintertime, it's the coldest at night when the sun is down. We like to capitalize on that extra heat that's being generated by the lights. There is a supplemental heat source in here. We have just your standard 30 amp shop heater. I think it's probably designed for like a larger size garage than this. It's a bit overkill in here. And from some of the data that we collected over the first winter of growing, it appears that this heater basically only needs to turn on for maybe 4 to 6 hours cumulatively in a 24-hour period to keep the unit hot. And most of that time it would be coming on when the lights are not on. And then on the inverse, in the summertime, we maintain our nighttime light cycle because it's the hottest during the day, and we would just prefer to not have those lights on during the day. I have them on right now for your benefit, but the plants actually went to sleep like about an hour ago. So I just thought you guys would want to see what it looks like with the awesome lighting in there. So the unit itself runs fairly efficiently. We take advantage of the heat and the other things that we can. So the big draw in here is, of course, the multiple light fixtures and the pumps, which obviously have to run all the time to keep the plants wet. But we estimate, unfortunately, mine's not metered separately from the rest of my entire facility, but just based on electrical math, knowing what the wattages are of all of the things that are in here that run and the amount of time that they run. With Manitoba Hydro's kilowatt rate, I think we're looking at, again, between $300 and $400 a month to run the unit. And then additional cost would be maybe about 100 liters of water a week. Sometimes we have little leaks and we spill some. We lose a lot during the harvest. In this hotter weather, we're definitely seeing more transpiration from the plants. But 100 liters a week for 1,800 plants seems to be much less than conventional growing. Although I'm probably not the person to ask about that because I'm actually a really terrible dirt gardener. So yeah, I'm not. If any of you out there are really great gardeners, you might know a little bit more about how much water is required to grow outdoors. But I imagine without direct sunlight and wind and all those other things that we're using a lot less water. What else can I tell you guys about here? It's such a small space. It's a really tiny tour. I could show you how we move the air around the sea can. So again, I've turned this fan off because of the noise, but down here, right against the floor, there's a fan. So that's that over there in the corner. And when it's on, it inflates this plenum, which is just a plastic tube that runs around the entire circumference of the can. So it's not inflated right now, but I can show you. Yeah, it just runs, it runs around the whole bottom and the air comes out of all of the perforated holes in it. Then we have these ceiling fans along the roof, and they push the air down in the middle. So the heater, let's say it's wintertime, the heater turns on in the mechanical room, that floor fan grabs that hot air, blows it around the circumference of the whole shipping container, and then the fans in the middle circulate it in a circular motion. So that moves the air, just it keeps there from being cold or hot spots in here. And then when it's summertime, or when it gets too hot in here, which actually we do have to ventilate it in the winter even when the lights are on, there's louvers built into the wall here and they're temperature controlled. So when it gets too hot, these open and draw in outside air. And then down at the end of the shipping container, that big round thing at the end is a giant like suction fan. So it starts pulling air and it draws in through the open louvers, and that's how we get fresh air recirculation inside. So we tried it in the winter because I didn't believe that you would actually need to ventilate when it's so cold outside, and the things I thought I knew about LED lights. So we ran it for 2 days without the ventilation hooked up, and it got to over, well, it was well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit inside of here. It was so hot in here that you could tell that the sea can itself was expanding. So we got that fired up right away, and I guess lesson learned. I should just listen to what people tell me. So yeah, we get quite a bit of ventilation even in the winter months. And on a day like today, I have it shut off right now, but it will probably ventilate steadily all day today. It's not really able to pull in very much cool air. I think it's 26 degrees in Churchill here today too. So it's our 3 days of summer happening. I'm not sure if I have anything else formally to cover, but maybe we'll hit some things with questions.
Thank you so much for that, Carly. That was amazing. I love that you're like, I don't really have that good of a green thumb, and yet. So to everybody out there who's like, gardening's not for me, be inspired, please.
Yeah.
All right. So questions. So again, if everybody just wants to turn on their cameras, it's great to hear the questions yourself. If you're not wanting to, you can put your question in the chat and I will happily ask it for you. But yeah, let's welcome each other. Let's see who's on the call. Kurt and Mike, Beth, amazing. Hi, welcome everyone.
Holy technology.
Look at all these nice humans. Hello. All right.
I've got a question, Carly.
Okay, let's go. We'll start with Kurt.
unless you got somebody else, Laura.
Well, Mike's got a question, so we can start there.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Oh, well, I was just wondering, Carly, I believe that you sell your produce by subscription. Is that correct? And
Yeah.
if so, how many subscribers are you able to feed with what you produce there?
Yeah, so it's been a flippy floppy marketing scenario for me, and obviously something that's way outside of my comfort zone. I have a science degree and I'm a Red Seal power electrician who quit Manitoba Hydro and went back to the nonprofit area. So marketing lettuce was definitely not anything I ever had any experience with. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with Churchill, but the like our population goes way up and way down, focused around these different tourism seasons. And unfortunately, unlike a place like Clear Lake where it turns on in May and then it shuts off in December, like for us, it's like it turns on for 2 months and then it turns off for a month and then it turns on for 3 months and then it turns off for 2 months. It's so, but my garden is relentless. So it just keeps going and going. So our first thought right off the bat was to get some locals on board just to have an outlet. Like if I'm literally drowning in lettuce, if there are a handful of Churchill people who are right into their greens, then they won't care if they pay for this much, but they get double, they won't care. So let's establish this baseline of interested people. And the Churchill Northern Study Center is a member-based organization, so it was a way for us to increase our membership, especially locally. Like, not a lot of people who live in Churchill traditionally would buy a membership to the research center. That's something that was more reserved for tourists or scientists traditionally. So we charge them a membership, then they pay their subscription amount. And it started with 10, then it went to 20. And currently we're sitting at about 50, which is the most I've really ever had. And that's because no one can leave town to shop anywhere else. So yeah, we got them. But we have also had some interest from the health center cafeteria. So even pre-COVID, that was new. And that was another nice way to keep the parties being fed to locals. And then we partner with a couple of, whatever you want to call it, seasonal lodges. The 2 local grocery stores do take a limited amount, but like that's also been increasing since people have been home and cooking a lot more. And then when our research center is open, we also like to use it in our own cafeteria. So we call it plant math, but essentially I'm mathing out my shelves and my plants that are due to be picked in such a way that we're always picking everything, and then we're trying to distribute it the best way possible. So, for instance, I got a text this morning from a restaurant that's going to open the first week of July. She wants to know if the same herbs that she bought last year are going to be available. So I have in my mind, like with the 6 to 8 week lag time for the plants I'm growing, what's coming up, like interest wise. And then we've just been trying to spread it around. I'm certainly not growing enough to feed anyone's restaurants, all their clients, even our cafeteria. We're still bringing in outside food, but the idea was just get it into local households and then, partner as much as possible just for that, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Like a feel-good piece or like a look what we can do piece, and then sort of act as an example for other communities just to show them that you can do it. So yeah, our harvest today was probably somewhere between 280 and 300 pieces sold. I usually only count the pieces I sold, not the exact number of pieces that I picked. Because if there's like a little dinky spinach that's only got 3 leaves on it, I would bundle it with another plant to make it equal a unit or whatever. So yeah, it's a little tricky, but you get to know it as you go. I saw a question flash across the bottom of the screen. Are there any other northern communities that are doing this? And I'll just touch on that right now because it kind of fits. So when we got our funding, Norway House actually, which is a First Nations community that's just south of us here, or close to Thompson, I guess, they had actually applied for the same funding that we had. And then we lost our rail line. And then they opened up a branch of that same funding, but called it the Churchill Regional Economic Development Fund. So it was a natural fit for us to then apply for the Churchill money and leave the Western diversification money for Norway House. So they were successful as well as us. Their unit is up and running. You can find them on Instagram or Facebook as Life Water Gardens, and they're doing an excellent job. And we were fortunate enough to host them here in March of 2019. I did a little hydroponic workshop for First Nations communities that were interested in trying similar. So we had guests from Roseau River, Sandy Bay, Norway House, Garden Hill, Puckatawagan. I'm probably forgetting one. I think there were 6 communities, but yeah, so we had them here for a week, and so it's really nice to see that Norway House was able to get going. And their produce is now featured in the Norway House Northwest Company Northern store, and they've been marketing themselves as well. So yeah, very cool.
All right, thanks. Mike, you had a question. Do you want to ask it?
Yes, thanks. I'm curious about the water in the tanks that nourishes the plants. Where do you get it? Does it come with nutrients? And if not, do you have to add them yourselves? And do you need to go through a lot of trouble to cool it, for example? Because that's...
Yeah, good question. Yeah. So the Northern Study Center itself, for 50% of the year, we have our water truck from town. So it's just treated municipal water. And then the other half of the year, we actually pump from a local lake and treat it on site ourselves, but to provincial water treatment standards. So it's essentially almost the same as municipal treated water. It goes through a UV filtration and chlorination process, and also bulk filtration. So I add just regular water into my tank. And then there is, the Growcer companies made this really easy. You definitely don't need to be like a hydroponic horticulturalist to operate this garden, which again, like I am not that, definitely. So they have 2 types of nutrients. One is like a fertilizer with a nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium ratio, like the same kind of thing you buy to spray on your plants in your own garden. And that goes into one of these black tanks and is mixed with the right amount of water for the mixture. And then there's also a calcium nitrate, which gives the plants both available calcium and a nitrate source when it's dissolved in the water. And this is the best part. Those 2 things, once you've mixed them the right way, go into the tank in exactly equal amounts. So if you just add a cup of one, then you just add a cup of the other. Again, this system was set up to dose the tanks automatically, but I have control issues and I didn't trust it and I couldn't see it because the tanks aren't see-through. So I've actually, for the last year, I've been feeding the plants manually, and I've been doing just that. We mix it to the correct amounts and we add it, and then we just monitor it with electrical conductivity meter, EC meter. So essentially all that EC meter is doing is measuring the amount of things that are dissolved in the water. It doesn't actually tell me how much nutrients is in here or anything, but I know that the 2 go in equal parts, and I want it to be 1900 microsiemens. So if it's 1900 microsiemens and I'm confident that the 2 have been added at the same amount, then I know that I'm feeding them correctly. And then what really helps the water is about once a month, I do an entire system flush. They explained it to me in a really interesting way. Like if you think about, like, let's just say for the Canada Food Guide, it says you should eat this much carbs, this much protein, this much vegetables. But you leave some of your vegetables behind on your plate. And then at your next meal, you get the same amount. Well, now your vegetable amount is out of whack. And the same thing happens in the water. Not all the plants are taking everything in the exact same amount. So my base solution that's left behind in the tank isn't perfect after one cycle through the system, right? So a once a month tank flush just allows us to start all over again with a nice, fresh, perfectly measured out amount. And then the one other tank is for, we'll call it acid control or pH balancing. So over time, as the plants remove the nutrients from the water, the solution overall becomes a lot more basic over time. And so you actually need to squirt little tiny bit of acid into the tank here and there just to maintain your correct pH. So it's like a 30% or maybe a 19% phosphoric acid solution. If you get it on your fingers, it gives you a little tingle, but it's not like burning your face off or anything. And it goes into the tank in very, very minute amounts. Probably not even 10 mils a week. Like, it's very little. It just goes in there just to keep your pH where the plants are happy, and they are happiest below 7, usually 4.8 to 5.2. So you do need to, interject every once in a while and add a little bit of that acid.
Okay, we have a question about who owns the CCAN, and like, I don't know if you want to get into it, but if you could, how much income it generates.
Yeah, sure. We can touch on that for sure. So I didn't do a good introduction. I got right into it, so I apologize for that, but I'm the sustainability coordinator at the Churchill Northern Study Center, which some of you may have visited on a virtual tour a couple of weeks ago. So the Churchill Northern Study Center is a nonprofit research and education facility that now also does some food security stuff, since we got this unit. So the Churchill Northern Study Center is the owner of the unit, and all of the revenue generated by the unit, I guess more or less goes into a budget for me to manage the unit, and then anything that's left over would just go back into our operating. So yeah, we kind of function differently than, like, but you could own this and run it as a business. That's how they market them from the Growcer company. So when we started, just to remind you guys, there was no rail line, and people in Churchill were really suffering. We lost a lot of families. A lot of people were out of work for an extended period of time. It was just a really rough time for Churchill. So when we started, the goal was to really keep the prices really low. The last thing I wanted was to sell it to the northern store and then have them apply their markup on it and then put it on the shelf and have it look like it was more expensive than lettuce that just came like 1,000 kilometers. And with the way that the northern store operates and the enormous markups that they put on food and they tack on transportation costs, I had to go real low. So I went lower than what was recommended to me, like in the business model for the unit. But I don't sell as much to the grocery store, so that's not that big of a deal for me. The price for the subscribers is lower per unit than what they would pay if they were buying it at the grocery store, and it's a nice even number. It's easy for me to work with. It's $10 a week for 3 pieces. It's $20 a week for 6 pieces. We bring it to town. You can come pick it up on Wednesday nights. It's the priority. So the launch box subscription service always gets filled first before anything else. So if you're into greens, you'll save like 60 cents per piece or more if you buy it from me in the subscription as opposed to buying it at the grocery store. But we wanted it in the grocery store because obviously subscriptions are not for everyone. They don't fit people's budgets or they don't fit your eating needs. So we wanted to do both. I would say that currently right now at around 300 pieces per month, I'm probably generating between $4,000 and $4,500 in revenue. If Rocket Greens was the only thing that I did and I only came to the study center for the hours that were needed, my wage would likely would be able to be covered, and my resupply and my hydroelectricity and all that, like, I think we would be very close to breaking even on it. But I'm holding an upper management position in the research center, and I've hired a student intern using some funding and some grant money. So I would say my project is operating a little bit outside of the revenue that it actually generates. But again, we're not in it for the money, so to speak. We were more in it because I'm a nonprofit, and selling lettuce is not really doesn't really fit exactly our mandate. This was more like a teaching opportunity, an opportunity to have an intern. And interestingly enough, my current intern, when she leaves here, she will be going to Kluwani Lake Field Station in the Northwest Territories, Yukon, sorry, and operating a unit there. They have purchased a different brand unit called the Crop Box. So she's taking this, they're putting her into a hydroponic horticulture class and then she's going to their field station to run their unit. So we're pretty proud of her for that. But the grocer will tell you, like the grocer company will tell you that they have a business model built around it. They guarantee it as a sound investment. They offer a lot of support and tools for assisting you in your business. They've been amazing with me, everything from helping me find biodegradable packaging. You know, this year, this COVID situation has really affected my organization. Like we are basically now, we've lost 95% of our revenue because we normally would supplement all of the things that we do by offering educational tours to American tourists. So without any visitors, we actually have no money. We're able to keep this going because I brought in a bit of grant money. I was able to cover my own wage. So like I'm actually one of the only staff members that's currently working at 100% wage and 100% hours. And yeah, so the grocer would tell you that it fits a model, like an economic model for paying off like a finance if you were to operate it as a business. Like, and I've often thought about it, you know, breaking out of the nonprofit and seeing what it would be like to do it as a business.
Fair, real to think about. If anybody has any further questions about the production, I feel like it got covered, but if it didn't, just like either throw your question in the chat or you can put a little star and I'll call on you to ask it yourself. But between now and then, we've got a question about condensation occurring inside or outside the sea can during the seasons. What's the humidity like in there?
So we do have a dehumidifier and we have it set up so that it pulls the humidity out of the air. And actually we pipe it right back into the tray. So we just put it back into the system. It does get a little condensing in here, but really like only at the most coldest temperatures. And we really only find it at the doorway, like where there's a crack. You can see some paint chipping here. That's because we have had ice and then we had to sort of smash it with a hammer to open and close the door. But a lot of that's improved since we added the porch. Like I actually operated it for the first winter without the porch. And my door is facing north, so that north wind is blowing directly on the door and coming through the small cracks. But now we put the porch on, and I've just added a small space heater on the bottom of the door in the porch, pointing right at the door. And then I bring a oscillating fan into the mechanical room here, and I point it right at the doorway, just to keep warm air right against the door. And that seems to help a lot. And then the only other place we see a bit of condensation buildup would be like right at the very back, because those are also doors. They do have a lot of rubber gasketing and stuff on them, but they're probably not quite as insulated. And we also have the hole cut in it for the ventilation, so that decreases its ability to stay as warm. So we get a little bit of water dripping down that back wall, but the rest of the can stays basically the same all year round. It's pretty neat.
Wonderful. If there's any more questions, please throw them in the chat or make the star. I'm wondering, so this operates in the north where it's very cold most of the time, the occasional warm days. But like, how much do you think it would be different if we were to put this in a warmer climate? Do you have any insight to that?
Not too much. I think, so the grocer company is actually operating one in Ottawa. I think it was 40 there yesterday. So they would probably know more about that. But them and I have discussed, I mean, we do get a couple weeks of really hot weather here, and the difference in Churchill and northern places is that it's just that sunlight. Like the sun never really goes down. 4, 5, 6 p.m. is actually like our hottest time of the day, because we don't get a relief. We don't get a sundown or a dusk at this time of year. So the sun's just beating down on this thing steadily all day. I think his name was Mike. He had asked about keeping the water cool. I guess they're doing an experiment right now to see whether an air conditioner, a water chiller, or both would create like the most ideal growing conditions. And I'm anxiously awaiting to find out, because I was recently successful on applying for a grant to upgrade everything in here, the dosing, the brain, the CO2 generator, everything. I have the money. And then I wrote into my budget water chiller, air conditioner, or both. So I want to know what's going to make the best plants, and then we'll have that. But I mean, we've been functioning now. This is going into my third summer. And yeah, we struggled a little bit with a bit of that root rot, which hydroponic growers are familiar with, and it does flourish at warmer temperatures. But with the regular flushing and a few other like small workarounds that we've done, we've learned to live with our Pythium root rot, and we're still able to produce really well. So, but I do know that we can be better. So I'm looking forward to upgrading our unit to be like on par with the other ones that are being sold now, so that we're, you know, we can continue to have these like meaningful conversations to people about how the technology works, and then also get the most out of my unit. Like 300 plants is 300 plants, not I had to double some up sometimes or whatever, you know.
Okay, thank you. How many hours per day is required for an operator?
It varies. You know, Mondays I don't do much. If I come in here on Monday and everything looks good, you know, maybe a little water top up, or sometimes those little black hoses get clogged, but not much. I spend a lot of the time on Tuesday. Tuesday we plant the seeds, which takes about an hour. Like every week we plant 600 seeds, no matter what. So planting those is an hour and a bit. I spend some of that day making phone calls and finding out what the grocery stores want. So my intern and I spend most of the day Tuesday preparing for Wednesday harvest. Harvest and distribution is a full day's work. Brittany usually spends a couple of hours in here on Thursdays just cleaning up and resetting. I mean, we are a whirlwind in here, and it's such a small space. So we mop, we get the seedling, we make sure that the seedlings are happy. But it should be like, you know, it should be between 20 to 30, but not much more than that, you know. If you have issues or something that needs a little bit more attention, or the weeks that you flush, once a month we take the whole seedling area apart and scrub it completely, shock back out its tank and rub it all down on the inside. So every couple weeks you have a bit more duties, but it's easy to fit it into a schedule.
Ah, yes, that's really insightful. Thank you. Is it a specific Rockwool product, or would Rockwool insulation cutoffs be usable?
Not sure. Like ours are produced for growing, so they are sterile. I'm guessing that is helpful. I'm not sure too much about Rockwool insulation. I've never used it before. I'm only familiar with styrofoams and that nasty pink itchy stuff. So yeah, that's a great question. If there was a way to, you know, tap into some kind of cutoffs from construction or something, if that worked, that would be amazing. But yeah, we're our annual resupply package through the Growcer company just includes our Rockwool, and it's a grow designed. It's got the little seedling holes already punched in it, and the cubes are cut such that fits the cubes in the trays. So yeah, there's oil in Rockwool insulation. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, so yeah.
All right. So we also have a question about the units connected to the community drain system. Is it connected to the community drain system?
Yeah, no, it's not actually. So the Churchill Northern Study Center is actually 30 kilometers outside of Churchill, so we have no municipal hookups for water or sewer here at all. So that's like a whole challenge for the building itself, especially when we've got 85 guests. And then for me, it's not that difficult. We position my unit close enough to our water tanks that we just run a hose in here when we need to top it up. And then if we do have a leak or spill, it's just going out onto the ground. It's just nutrient-rich water, and we're sitting on a gravel pad. It would be no different than watering a garden. We did capture some of the drain off last year and dump it onto a dirt garden. We don't spill that much. The idea is not to spill, so we try not to, but the system is designed that if there was a big water spill in here, it actually just, it disappears under the floor, and then it just drains down onto the gravel pad. So yeah, and then when we do the flushing, yeah, like I said, last year when we were doing some outdoor growing projects, we saved some of it, and then we just run a hose just over to the edge of the gravel pad, and yeah, I think the willows over there are super well fed. Yeah.
That's so nice. That's so nice.
But on that note, that actually reminded me. So also being 25 kilometers outside of Churchill and being fully electric, we experience more power outages probably than maybe the average Manitoban. Manitoba Hydro is great at quick response times and restoring power as fast as possible, but we're like at the very end of the line, literally. Like there's a 115 kV line that comes out of Gillam area to us. That's a long transmission line. Lots of things can happen. Bad lightning storms often will shut us down, and any maintenance that they're doing at the converter station means long power outages. We just had like a 12 or 16-hour power outage a couple weekends ago. So the Churchill Northern Study Center, when they built their new facility, they invested in a diesel generator just for that reason. We can't have 85 people 30 kilometers out of town at -50 with no electricity. So we have a large diesel generator, and we were able to sneakily wire my unit through that system so that when the power goes out, this is also on diesel backup. So sometimes when the power goes out, I might whip out here and just make sure that everything came back on normal, because things can be weird sometimes. But for the most part, I'm confident that I can step away for a weekend or for a 2-hour power outage and know that at the end everything will come back on as it should. And the brain box itself is smart enough to remember all the settings and everything. So everything should just turn back on and remember what time it is and know what it's supposed to do. So yeah, so we're super lucky for that.
Yeah, I wish my brain remembered all of its settings. Haha.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I said yes. I hear you.
Okay, well, it seems that we have no more questions in the chat. So I guess we'll just wrap it up. Carly, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share?
No, well, maybe a little tiny one. So, being in the northern community, when we first got the unit, like, it was so exciting. I wanted to do this, and I wanted to do cooking classes, and I wanted to get a student to make a cookbook, and I wanted to do all these other things. And then, and then I sort of realized that, when you look through the world from a different lens, like being born and raised in the South, I have a palate for green foods. I'm educated, formally educated, and I just sort of started realizing that it's not really my place to tell people what to eat or what they should eat, especially not in the North. So, my total focus just shifted away from all these big ideas to just like concentrating on being a really good grower, or the best grower that I could be, and making that food available and letting people make the choices for themselves. And like, I knew the uptake was going to be really slow. And like in the wintertime, people tell me they don't eat their lettuce. And like, I don't blame them. I don't really want to eat salad at -50 either. Like, that's not what my body wants, So we try to do a nice mixture of lettuce, but also cookable foods, like the bok choys and kale and things that you can add, things you can easily add into foods that you would normally eat, like moose and caribou are huge in Churchill. I don't want you to make a whole new dish. I don't think you need a new recipe. Just chop it up and put it in your caribou stew. So, trying to, sort of take like my settler-born views out of the equation, my Southern saviorness completely out of the equation, and just put this stuff out into my community, and then share my experiences with other communities that might have similar challenges, either with food prices or logistics behind acquiring food, and just focus on that completely. So I think the Churchill Northern Study Center is very proud of the Rocket Greens project. And like we're looking forward to some of these upgrades and just, being better every time we try. So.
Totally. Thank you for that reminder, as I see that many of us are in the South. And it's a good thing to think about, that we all come with our biases and perspectives that might not apply to everybody. So thank you for that. We just had 2 questions that popped in, so let's get to those. So do you know if the Norway House unit is also a grower? Growcer?
Norway
Sorry.
House unit is also a grocer, which is why I bring it up, because it's exactly similar. I did see flash across the bottom of my screen, someone was asking about what they were doing in the PAW. They are hydroponic growing in the PAW. I don't know a lot about their system. I do know that the first time they started it up, it was some kind of Korean, I believe it was Korean technology, and they were doing tomatoes and other stuff. But I'm really not sure of the status of that project now. But theirs wasn't a shipping container. I think they retrofitted a space for theirs, whereas kind of like, I think that the unique piece about ours was that transportability and that sort of like containerized concept. Yeah.
So on that subject of other communities, do you know if any of the other communities that came to visit your station are planning to get started, or any other communities, period?
I think that Sandy Bay and Rosa River were still very interested. And it's my understanding that they're like quite organized reserves and have a lot of access to resources. So yeah, I'll just wait and hear. It was on my list of things to do this month to check back in with. There was a consulting firm working with them. I'm not really exactly sure if they're 100% role, but a lot of it was to help them seek out their funding and organize. So yeah, I was going to shoot a message out and just, yeah, check on the status of everybody. But I've been following Norway House since they turned their unit on. We've spoke a few times. And the pictures of their produce, I was actually like, their lettuce looks better than mine. So whatever, yeah. Yeah, they're doing really well.
It's not a competition. Good food is good food.
No, not at all. But they have the new stuff, right? So it was more like an envy of their equipment than competing against them for who was growing better lettuce.
Amazing. Well, now you're getting the upgrade, so maybe the same thing will happen here. Just a quick question also, is the rocket range still in operation?
The rocket range is not operational. The last rocket that was launched in any sort of official way was in 1998. There was a private company that attempted to take it over, but it was sort of like, if you've ever seen the Simpsons monorail episode, it was kind of like that. They came in here with their flashy dioramas in Churchill and marketed this space port that they were going to build, and took a lot of investors' money, and then it completely flopped. So it was exactly like the monorail episode, except for it was rockets. But no, the structures are standing. 4 of the original 6 rocket launchers are out there. 2 were lost in fire in the 60s or 70s. They're considered heritage buildings, but there's no tours or anything. They're just dangerous, and it would cost millions to bring them up to code. So the Churchill Northern Study Center sort of acts as a steward of the site, just making sure, like, reporting if things tip over, keeping things locked and sort of keeping our eye on it for, keeping people from creeping around inside there and stuff, because it is, some of those facilities are quite dangerous. There's asbestos and all kinds of nasty stuff in there probably. So, but yeah, no, it's not operational, but it's there to look at, and it is kind of neat.
Yeah, I've seen a few pictures of people coming back from Churchill, and it's like, oh, weird, interesting.
Yeah, we have a couple of lounges in our facility that are sort of dedicated to the history of the rocket range. He passed away in December 2012, but the longtime maintenance man at the Churchill Northern Study Center did actually work on the rocket range. So he was very knowledgeable about all the sites. So I learned sort of what I know about how the different buildings function from him. He's lost, which is a really sad resource to lose. He had so much knowledge, not just about Churchill and the rocket range, but everything. But we have some great photographs and things that were archived, and also things that were just literally left behind when the military pulled out. So we pulled out some pretty cool stuff and framed them and hung them up so people can see what it looked like when rockets were launching from here.
Oh, history. What a thing. What a thing. Okay, well, I see a lot of gratitude in the chat for all of the knowledge that you just shared with us, Carly. So thank you so much for taking the time. I cannot tell you how nice it's been to learn a little bit more about this program, and just getting thinking about how we can grow our own food and be a little bit more food secure everywhere. So thank you for that. And also just like connecting buildings to the role that they can play in terms of helping us make sure that we get those greens. Like we think of greenhouses, but now this is a new technology. So this is really great.